couple weeks on now from the Luigi Mangione, the United Healthcare shooting. I've been fascinated by the kind of full court press that the media is engaged in to kind of remove healthcare and like the profits generated by the health insurance industry from being politicized, and just essentially turning this murder into like a giant morality play about how we've lost our way. And I'd like to begin with probably the best media hit that I saw in this regard was Michael Smirkanish on CNN lamenting the fact that he walked by the site of the murder just the other day and did not see any piles of flowers and teddy bears being left for CEO Brian Thompson. And in fact, the only evidence that the murder took place there that he did discover was a poster that said "Free Luigi." It depicted him as a saint. And he was just like,
no memorial of the kind that often appears spontaneously after a similar tragedy, like when John Lennon was murdered in New York City in 1980. But there was no sign of any makeshift memorial on 54th Street. Instead, a poster was taped outside the Hilton Hotel depicting the suspect as a saint with the words "Free Luigi."
And I guess the thing that struck me about this is that, like, Michael Smirkanish, like, he wants to know why didn't people erect makeshift memorials for Brian Thompson like they did for John Lennon? And the thing is, he absolutely knows why. But like I said, this is part of that they're working overtime to make sure that the profits made by the health insurance industry is never politicized. And I was talking to Catherine about this over the weekend. I think she put this quite succinctly. She was like, if you woke up one morning and saw the headline, CEO of Ace Hardware killed outside Manhattan Hotel, I think people, like, the reaction would just be like, oh, like, gee, I wonder why that happened, or that's kind of shocking. But the fact that everyone in America saw the headline, United Healthcare CEO assassinated in broad daylight in Manhattan, and virtually everyone just thought, yeah, I know the reason why that happened.
Yeah, right. They're just sort of like, I'd like to know more about the specifics, but my first response is, fuck yeah, dude. Like, let's go. Yeah, like
the idea that, like, any, like, Fortune 500 CEO, much less, like, anyone who makes over, let's say, like, $250,000 a year, that they would be honored by one of those garish, like, teddy bear roadside memorial displays.
Too good to be forgotten.
Driver or something.
Yeah. If like a big ice shard fell on me, that's my favorite death scenario as of late. If I get impaled by a big ice shard and people put up teddy bears, I would haunt all those people. It's very tacky.
Yeah, like, give those to children. I don't want.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm dead. I died hilariously, and I don't need your toys.
Yeah,
also,
giving, like, teddy bears as, like, a marker of death is just, like, it's sort of like the last insult. It's like, we're giving him baby shit because he was into baby stuff.
Presumably he's starting again somewhere, so, like, eventually maybe he'll find these and been reincarnated as a slightly worse guy because of what he did in this life. But yeah,
it's like giving someone a Barney-themed funeral. It's very demeaning.
Hey, if I die, I want Barney at my funeral. I want all of Barney's friends, like, you know, baby
getting carried out of the church by the Teletubbies.
See my pallbearers. Well, yeah, you know, hey, if the Sesame Street Muppets, they're looking for work now. So if they want to, like, you know, do gig my funeral, please
do the, like, the Ghanaian pallbearer dances. Yeah. The bit that I had seen this Smirkanish thing about being like, why is there no memorial? Just, I saw the headline and was like, that's disgusting. But, like, that happens 1,000 times a day. That's just participating in culture. I hadn't seen that he made the comp between United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and John Lennon is one of the most deranged. I mean, this whole discourse has had a lot of moments, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff where people actually wrote it down, presumably read over their own copy and missed it. But, like, how do you not fucking hear yourself when you're, like, you know, beloved by millions, polarizing, one of the most popular artists of all time? Okay, that kind of reminds me of this guy I hadn't heard of before who looks like a D3 offensive line coach. And who ran a company that basically existed to make sure that nobody got more health care than they deserved.
Well, David, like, I mean,
woman is the underinsured of the world.
Think about it.
But David, I mean, like, that's part of the pushback. Is I hear the, like, like these narratives like from health insurance like representatives, and they're just like, health insurance companies, we're really like the middle managers of the American healthcare system, and we're really there to protect the public from patients who access care too much.
Right. From
Like,
being able to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
You ever
It's like
been
the
there? It
people who are
sucks. We're
abusing the system by simply using their health insurance more than they should and driving up costs. And Felix and I, we were talking about this over the weekend, but like I keep people like they're citing polls, and they're like, actually 60% of the American public says that they have good health insurance, and it's just like, well, sure, but then if you told them that they could have, if they lived in Europe, they would have the same health insurance but not pay for it, they might start to resent the health insurance company they're paying money to. But then other things would be like, this is the idea that this Luigi guy is some sort of folk hero. This is a like, a marginal point of view, and let's not get over our skis on like, celebrating this guy. And they'll point to a poll that says, when the question is asked, should this husband and father of two been shot down like a dog in the streets? Do you support the cold-blooded murder of this human being who was a father and husband? 10% of the country is like yes, and they're like, look, it's nobody thinks that, but it's just like,
I was expecting that to be
people
like 48, 52, where they're like, I need to know more about him, but he sounds like a fucking shithead.
Well, I mean, like the poll question I'd like to be asked is like, well, like obviously, sure, no one supports murder, and like, this guy's probably going to spend the rest of his life in prison for killing this guy. But the question should be asked, do you believe Brian Thompson and people like him are also murderers? I would love to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah. That's been the bit that's like the most deranging in sort of the coverage of it, because I think that all of this, and there's been a great deal of it, the Atlantic has had a lot of it, but every newspaper has sort of weighed in to some extent or another on like the worrying coarsening of the culture that this portends. And I think to a certain, that not just the murder, but that people sort of responding with like a flurry of LOLs and 0 teddy bears of tribute. And I think that there's a sense in which like, if you just woke up for the first time today, that would certainly seem like a coarsening of the culture to you. And yet I think that it's just a question of like what kind of violence you are capable of seeing, and then like how you're able to countenance it. I think that the idea that, it's bad to shoot people in the back on the sidewalk, I don't support that. And yet, I mean, I think that this is the entire binary of this being like good or bad, like are you team Luigi or team Brian, falls apart as soon as you start considering what the healthcare system does and what it's designed to do. Like it's not a conversation there. Like the volume of brutality is so outlandishly on the side of the institution as opposed to the individual that like I can't really believe that anybody's talking about it as if it's like a 50-50 thing.
Yeah, it's also like no one is going to say on the phone, like, yes, I love this murder. Like, I really thought that we sort of like learned our lessons about polls, but apparently not. Even that, like, 10% of the American populace that will answer polling phone calls will openly say yes. I mean, the poll question I saw is Luigi a hero? If 10% of those people are saying yes, then, to do the Bill Mitchell methodology, it's probably like 89%.
Yeah, you gotta uncuck that result.
Yeah.
Well, like I mean, like as I said, like mentioned, like in bringing this up, like it feels like but 4 years ago there was a moment in this country where the healthcare industry became politicized, and the idea of Medicare for all, or the idea that like this industry really only exists in America and is like basically marginal or doesn't exist in the rest of the world, which has much better and cheaper like healthcare systems than we do. But like, but as soon as the 2020 primaries were over, like it's been like that issue of healthcare in American society and the role that the health insurance like industry, which is a huge portion of our economy, and like something like 1 out of every $7 spent on healthcare in this country is paid directly to United Healthcare in one way or another, has been kept invisible. Like it's not politicized. It's not an issue. It's not controversial. And like in light of this assassination now, which is like, put it rather violently into the forefront of people's consciousness, and like the media and the people who, speak for the health insurance industry in the media are like genuinely shocked to find like they don't know how to metabolize this like outpouring of anger or support for the person who killed this guy. And like, so they have to make it into this morality play. And David, you mentioned the Atlantic. These are headlines from the Atlantic that was just from the last 6 days. First one, Luigi Mangione has to mean something. The internet is better at telling stories than it is at making sense, by Charlie Warzel. This is how political violence goes mainstream. The United Healthcare shooting marks a new moment of normie extremism, by Ali Breland. Luigi Mangione's commonplace, deplorable politics. From his actions and the glee that they have elicited, one learns not that the healthcare system is broken, but that many people are, by Graham Wood.
Indeed. That's a Graham Wood
the last
subhead
one is
right
really
there.
That was a bar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Graham Wood thought that stupid shit was hard.
Yep. You read that sentence and you know that is spelled Graeme. It's a colonial spelling.
But the granddaddy, like the main one from the Atlantic, was by a woman named Adrienne LaFrance for the Atlantic, and the headline is "Decivilization may already be underway." And now, look, I feel like, do I even need to mention the grotesque irony of the Atlantic magazine lecturing people on how we've become desensitized to violence and bloodshed? I mean, do I need to bring up the parallels here of what that magazine's been doing over the last year? I mean, we can just leave it there, but I want to read a little bit from this article. Begins, the line between a normal functioning society and catastrophic decivilization can be crossed with a single act of mayhem. And just like I said, just the introduction of a term like decivilization, of just the pure mystification and an intentional pretend play acting to try not to understand why people are just saying LOL when they think of this guy getting killed, or why they're not so much that they're saying LOL to him being killed, but why they're reacting LOL to this outpouring of like, he was a good man he was actually trying to work to get health costs down in this country.
Meaning, like, to improve his margins.
Right, I was going to say.
Yeah,
like, he was trying to get health expenditures down in this country. Like, it's not a goal. Like, you're doing a business thing there.
Well, one of my favorite things I saw was someone said that at the start of the pandemic, the federal government couldn't figure out how to get money to providers in time. And Brian Thompson stepped in and said, "Hey, we can help." And it's like what a hero, keeping the system that's enriched him and everyone before him going. Like, no one talks about, like, J.P. Morgan loaning the government, the equivalent of $100 billion. Like, it was this great philanthropic act.
Yeah. To me, the decivilization thing, I mean, she goes on and explains. It's worth mentioning, too, that this woman is the executive editor of The Atlantic. Like, this isn't one of those things where it's some freelancer grinding out a take for $350 because, like, the dog's got to eat.
No, because they know this is important and they need to get their big guns on the case, like Adrienne LaFrance and Graham Wood. They got to come out and be like, hey,
all the greats.
Hey, like, the problem with our society, it's not all the people that die or go bankrupt because of our fucking evil, profit-seeking health insurance industry. It's actually just the crass, unfeeling, violence-soaked. I mean, they might as well be saying. This is like when they blame Marilyn Manson for Columbine.
Also, like, the mark of a freelancer, a freelancer who's just being thrown to the dogs to make some rage bait. There's an interpersonal touch there that isn't here. Like, if a freelancer wrote this, it would be like, signs that your boyfriend may, like, freak out and kill a CEO.
It's always weird. Business Insider has as, like, a big part of their business plan, that model. Like, there's stuff that you pay for that's generally very well reported, but then the rest of it is them taking a 22-year-old and being like, you're going to write a story called I Went to Los Angeles and the Food Sucked. Like, you're gonna want to change your name. Like, and if it's possible, you're going to want to alter your appearance because you will never publish under this name or that face again.
That is the bottom rung of the article economy now is, like, getting a 22-year-old to write an article that's like tips and tricks to returning your foster dog.
But going back to Ms. LaFrance here, she says, in recent days, journalists and other observers have worked to uncover the motivations of the accused killer. And it's like, okay, they've done that. If there's one thing we don't need to argue about, it's his motivations. He has a whole fucking manifesto that the media is also
long.
not running.
As manifestos go, it's like basically a long tweet.
He goes, this is a worthy exercise when trying to understand a single shocking event. But when attempting to understand how brutality spreads across society, studying individual ideologies only gets you so far. As violence worsens, it tends to draw in and threaten people of all ideologies. So yeah, like I mean, saying a lot
Thank you,
there.
Professor.
Yeah.
And once again, it's like
This is
the
also
Atlantic
basically
magazine
like,
that-
what if you become CEO of a health insurance company?
Yeah.
and like I'm sorry, like I said, the Atlantic magazine has been running PR for like an ongoing Holocaust. So like I mean, and they're coming up with every excuse for why that's actually okay and not
Also, I
violence.
think with a similar mystification involved,
Yeah.
too, where it's basically the idea of like, if this is again sort of presented as a binary, and like Luigi is the termite eating at the foundations of our culture, like civilization is our current healthcare system in that.
Yeah.
Like if you're in that argument, in the same way that like with the certainly with the coverage of Israel and Palestine, that a lot of it is basically like the force of like the democracy, the one that is like standing up for the virtues that we all hold dear in this type of culture, is the one that's like dropping bombs on tents. Like you can't, at some point you have to interrogate the frame that you came in with when it no longer remotely matches the argument that you're keeping on making.
it's kind of the same thing. It's like sort of like I know to the casual unlettered observer, it seems like the American healthcare system is just about the most expensive, and like it profits off misery and death. And I know like for simple people, it would seem like can't we have something different than that? But it's actually the trade-offs here are quite complicated, and like they do the same thing with like they're like I know it seems bad to shoot doctors, journalists, and children's with quadcopters, but like it's a complex issue. It's very complicated, and we shouldn't surrender ourselves to emotion and ideology and rage against the people doing it.
That's the this that is so well. Whatever. Go ahead, Felix. I'm just gonna keep making the same point because I'm still mad about the one thing. Go ahead.
Just like the way that like all of these are, I've seen like a billion articles like this, but the way they talk about like the crime specifically is like Luigi was one of the bad guys from Death Wish. Like he was just like, yeah, let's go out tonight and commit a murder. Yeah. It could be anyone. I don't care.
They killed the Giggler!
They had no business doing that. None.
Yeah, I mean, I think the part of it that I think also you have to avoid in this is that his ideology was pretty incoherent beyond hating private health insurance.
Yeah, but incoherent in a way that like most Americans.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That. I mean, the sort of thing, and I think that that's also been the other sort of like counter discourse of this that you've seen in New York, is that like this happens right around the time that Daniel Penny is acquitted on all charges for choking a man to death on the subway while people recorded on their phones. And so there's been this attempt to sort of like hold it up, in some cases, like literally on the cover of the New York Post, where it's like a picture of a smiling Daniel Penny next to a picture of like the worst picture they can find of Luigi Mangione, which is still just
is better than the best picture that's ever been taken of me.
I know. I was going to say that's just basically like Christian Bale has a booger. Like it's like, sorry, he's still a really good looking guy. But like trying to create that binary is entirely about like whose lives are worth something and what ways of killing are or are not honorable. And I just don't think that any of that holds up to the barest scrutiny in this case.
Well, going for some more drivel from the Atlantic here, it says, we already understand many of the conditions that make a society vulnerable to violence. And we know that those conditions are present today, just as they were in the Gilded Age. Highly visible wealth disparity, declining trust in democratic institutions, a heightened sense of victimhood, intense partisan estrangement based on identity, rapid demographic shift, flourishing conspiracy theories, violent and dehumanizing rhetoric against the other, a sharply divided blah, blah, blah. Then it goes on. One way to understand which direction a society is going, toward or away from chaos, is to study emotional undercurrents and its attitude toward violence broadly. Medieval Europe, for example, was famously brutish. I love that. Medieval Europe, famous for its brutality. Yeah. But I would say, honestly, the average person in medieval Europe was probably more kind and charitable to their fellow Christian than anyone in America is today.
Right. I mean, it's like other things that medieval Europe was known for was being like incredibly malnourished and everyone dying at the age of 34. Like, I'm not sure that that's entirely applicable in this particular case, but
you have to assess the whole culture and its direction over time. A society's propensity for violence may be ticking up and up and up, even as life continues to feel normal to most people. A drumbeat of attacks by different groups or individuals with different motivations may register as different kinds of problems. But take the broad view that you may find the point at the same diagnosis. Our social bonds are disintegrating. And it's like, gee, it does seem like maybe not like American society domestically is getting more and more violent, but like America as it relates to the rest of the world has been, a steady uptick of violence for the last, 30 years now. or like probably most of my entire fucking life.
Yeah.
Like this is how this country relates to the rest of the world is through war and violence.
Yeah.
And,
And I think
that
domestically,
process
too.
necessarily like demands a desensitization and numbness from the American public.
Absolutely right. I mean, I think that's the issue with this is, and again, this is the sort of like, are you hearing yourself, Adrian LaFrance thing that I kept thinking and reading it, is that like what you want is brutality, like domestic brutality, but not violence. That like what our healthcare system is brutal. Like it is the sort of thing where like you will lose all of your money and probably your life if you get sick at some point in your life. Like even if you have good insurance, it's going to be as hard as it can possibly be to get what you want from it. And that is by design. That is the business model. It's not the sort of thing where it's not functioning properly. That's how it's designed to function. That's brutal, but it's administrative. It's not the sort of thing that, you know, happens to you while you walk down the sidewalk and kills you instantly. It's something that happens to you over the course of your fucking life every day, and that functions as a threat even when it's not hurting you. The 60% of people that say they like their health insurance. I mean, for me, like I've never liked my health insurance. I like having it more than I've liked not having it, but that doesn't mean it's good. I don't want to interact with it at all if I can avoid it.
And I think another thing that we sort of alluded to is that like due to his like, you know, slightly like, I don't know, vaporous politics of Luigi Mangione is like the fact that he can't be pigeonholed easily as being a man of the left or right, I think makes like the media's desperation all the more like immediate, because like he can't be siloed off into like he's a lone wolf right-wing terrorist or like, you know, a radical left-wing communist anarchist or something like that. He's just more or less a kind of like, you know, what would otherwise be like a, you know, like well-off, well-educated young man in this country.
Yeah.
Well, I think that like is sort of subtly one of the bigger things that makes people short circuit and write these sort of like nonsense articles where it's like there have been a lot of societies in the world and violence has been in all of them. But you know, it's the fact that like someone who had something to lose did this.
Yeah.
That idea is like fundamentally terrifying to like a Graham Wood or really anyone at the Atlantic or anyone in any of these publications, because like the rationale for every like horrible thing that everyone does, whether it's like John Kirby or anyone at any of these publications, is like, well, you know, what am I supposed to do? Just go off the grid? Oh, do you want me to kill myself? I have a mortgage to pay. When someone who was like maybe predestined for a life like that, just like for one reason or another snaps and does something beyond himself, that is a very scary thing to face, because everything else is reinforced to make you not do that. The reason that we have so many homeless people is just as like a cudgel to show people like this, don't fuck up,
Yep.
don't do anything brave, or you will end up falling through the cracks without any safety net.
Yeah.
Just
Becoming
a permanent pest to everyone.
Becoming like depersoned in the way that like, you know, the Daniel Penny's victim has in this case.
Yeah.
Where it's just basically like, I think that is exactly the thing that sort of like puts off not just like elite discourse people, but Peter Teal's made some media appearances trying to talk about this, and he's been looking.
Appearances would be putting it mildly.
Yeah, apparitions. He's appeared in the way that like Slimer was in that ballroom in Ghostbusters, just worryingly greasy, grinding his teeth, blinking his eyes at hummingbird speed. And I think it's just the idea that somebody like that.
I like to see him blink both sets of eyelids. You can see that.
He's been leaving puddles in a lot of places.
Yeah, the idea of a full spectral apparition of Peter Teal showing up on Newsmax to say that we need to have a reasoned dialogue on this is sense that somebody has been perturbed by the wrong type of person getting theirs.
One might say that he had a reasoned dialogue with an ex-boyfriend.
Well, it's interesting, like the right wings, like the attempts on the right to like metabolize Luigi Mangione was more or less dead on arrival, because like the first day it happened, they were like, look at these psycho lefties celebrating this murderer. And then like all of their comments were like, yep, me too. I guess I'm a lefty now.
Like under
Fuck
like
that guy.
Ben Shapiro videos where they're like, I love all the things that you say about people of color, but I must respectfully disagree with you on this one, Ben. Like, if you've lost those guys, like...
I think they've been smart enough to just let this one drop and instead like get in on all the joy and glee of celebrating Daniel Penny, who's like, you know, they're a vigilante hero. And it's just like, you know, it shows that like, look, everybody supports murder in some fucking context.
Yeah,
like,
right. Like Daniel Penny was at the Army-Navy game in the fucking presidential box. Like there's certainly a photo of Elon Musk standing slightly too close to him somewhere on the newswire.
But I would like to bring up now attempts from the sort of liberal media to sort of corral public sentiment on this. And I had to turn now to an article in The Root, which is a publication that I pretty much had forgotten existed since 2020. But like, holy shit, they're still around and still putting out absolute fire.
This is the best article I've ever read.
The headline here is Luigi Mangione isn't the brilliant thirst trap y'all made him out to be by Madison Gray for The Root.
Damn it, I'm always wrong.
Yeah.
I'll get it right one day.
Yeah. I like reading these blogs, though, because it's how you find out that you're always wrong. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It says here, and then the subhead is, this cat is being heralded as some type of brilliant rogue vigilante, probably because of his looks. Nah, son.
Wait, no?
Yeah,
That's a nah. It's a nah for me, dog.
I thought, like, okay, maybe he isn't the vigilante thirst trap I wanted him to be, but his roguish good looks are at least like something. But apparently, I'm just a big fucking idiot.
Don't I have egg on my face?
It begins, the best line from the Godfather Saga is from the second movie in the series. Michael Corleone says, if anything in this life is certain, if history has taught us anything, is that you can kill anyone. Maybe Luigi Mangione took this really seriously when he decided to allegedly bust a cap in the back of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on December 4th before disappearing. Some were shocked.
Congratulations to the author of this article. You are the first non-undercover cop to say bust a cap since 1997.
Yeah, you have to imagine that this whole article is being read to Mario Van Peebles in the movie New Jack City.
It says here, some were shocked that a broad daylight killing could take place in Midtown Manhattan, one of the most monitored areas in the country. Others actually cheered the killing of the leader of a company that has gained infamy among regular people seeking reliable insurance. Before Mangione's arrest, when only an unclear photo of him at a New York hostel circulated, people were hailing him as some kind of brilliant vigilante who struck a blow against the evil healthcare industry. Others were lusting over him harder than they do Timothy Chalamet. Many believe this mastermind had fled the country for a place with no extradition laws, never to be seen on American soil again. And like, I like the setup of this article is that they're like, yeah, you probably thought he was some rogue, brilliant vigilante mastermind, but like, actually, like, you know, he fucked up because like, would they be praising him if he got away with it? Like, are they just saying, oh, he was stupid to get caught?
Yeah, that's basically what this is. I mean, I think that, and also the idea of it being like, I didn't think that he was like Jason Bourne, but I for sure, like when he wasn't caught instantly, I was like, there's no way the NYPD is doing this stuff. Like they are injecting steroids harder than they ever have, but they're not like gonna find somebody in New York City, especially if he got out in time. Like, but that doesn't mean, I don't know. That wasn't because of his roguish good looks. It's because I'm like familiar with how the cops generally do in cases like this.
Yeah, and also like, okay, let's see you look cooler when you kill a guy. because that was his first time, and when I saw it, I was like, he's done this before, but he hadn't.
Me too.
He was like McLovin having sex for the first time and making that girl come. He did so well. He looked so calm. He like the way that he was like manually rechambering the rounds. He at least practiced a lot, and it's like, okay, I anyone who has ever written an article, I dare you go and kill someone, and I'll review the video. I've seen a lot of videos of people getting shot. And if you can do as well as that, then okay.
David
But
Roth
no.
isn't the jowly, hunchbacked, middle-aged man that y'all are making him out to be.
And it's like, yeah, like I know the NYPD couldn't arrest him, but the fashion police is on the case. I bet y'all thought he probably looked pretty good in that hoodie and face mask. But it says here, now that we know that Mangione actually came from privilege with his Ivy League engineering and tech intern background, he probably could have written his own ticket. He instead chose to turn away from that past, according to a manifesto he wrote, railing against the healthcare industry. Something which, to be fair, needs railing against.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
That's an awesome to be sure paragraph.
Yeah, to be sure.
We love to have that in there.
As smart as he's supposed to be, Mangione was never really about the criminal life. He says Mangione was never about that criminal life. Yeah. He did dumb shit like remove his face mask in a heavily surveilled area. Apparently, he left a trail of evidence, and even in his perp walk, he wouldn't shut up. A violation of rule number 1 when you get cuffed. And it's like, I mean, I don't know who wrote this article, but like, has she been in and out of prison? Like, I mean, I like. What crimes has she committed that like she's gotten away with?
Yeah, like would he be cooler if it was like, oh, he did 5 murders that we actually never found out about?
Yeah,
yeah.
Right. Then
Would it be cool if he did it for money?
Yeah, like it's bad to do all those murders, but you would at least be about that life. You would remove that criticism from the blog. This feels like. I mean, like, there's obviously levels of being too online or mediated and writing about things that are, untold and unfathomable. I think even probably in the rest of this story, we're going to get to some of them, but this is like watching like The Bourne Identity and like critiquing the choices that you make during your rooftop chase in Marrakesh. Where you're like, oh, this guy's never been in a fucking souk before, and it shows.
I mean, the way he crushed that guy's windpipe with a book, like the book was the paperback. It used to be used the hardcover. But then the final graph I want to read here, it says, folks, especially white women, are standing Mangione because he's young and handsome. And I guess pretty privilege also applies when you take a mugshot. It makes me think of when serial killer Ted Bundy became a thirst trap for white women. One of it even went so far as marrying him and having his kid while he was on death row. The medical term for it is hybristophilia, and it's basically an attraction to really, really bad boys. And it's once again, it's just like trying to make it seem like, well, maybe the reason, A, he's not a serial killer, but B, like, maybe the reason he started talking about it immediately after getting arrested is that, like, he wasn't just trying to do a murder and get away with it. Maybe, like, he was doing this for reasons larger than himself. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, you should at least have to, like, I don't know, when you're categorizing the type of crime he did and assessing its success or not, I think it should be at least part of the conversation.
Yeah, this is the part with all of this. You can try to write about political violence without acknowledging any of the political aspects of it. And of course, like, then it does come down to the guy's jawline, but, like, you're leaving out 90% of what happened.
To quote my sister, after she saw this article, do white women really deserve to be called folks after doing that with Ted Bundy? it's just, like the categorization of people. White women are folks. Ted Bundy is a very bad boy. Ted Bundy could, he is the son of at least one folks if his mom was white.
Yeah, this is. Well, whatever. Finish the poem. I'm sure there's some. There has to be a conclusion, right? Why else would you write a blog if you didn't have a reason to write it?
She connects like the Ted Bundy thing to Donald Trump. Like she goes, well, that's a whole like. It also reminds me of how white women are voting for an abuser, but that's a whole other blog.
No, it says,
and I was like,
but it says,
always leave them wanting more.
It shouldn't come as a surprise because some of the same white women last month voted for a man who thinks their bodies are government property. But that's a whole other discussion. Mangione is trying to fight extradition to New York, where he'll be arraigned and likely formally charged. He'll probably wind up in Rikers Island, where, trust me, all that standing by the public won't protect bruh. Oh, okay, so just like a sly joke about being raped to death in prison there. Yeah, so just that's hey, that's part of that life, I suppose. But
I've seen multiple people do that. Like Jesse Waters also did that, where it's like, oh, we'll see how handsome he is in prison. Where the Aryan Brotherhood, the Sereños, Norteños, and Black Gorilla family will all unite to get revenge for Brian Thompson.
Yeah, I was gonna say
their hero.
Yeah, I think this is the bit of it where you can't like when the discourse gets this dumb, even leaving the root part of it aside, that like if Fox News is basically like who's hotter, Daniel Penny or Luigi Mangione, you have to pick the hotter guy. Otherwise, you're stuck doing that, like, which is you sound stupid and also mostly you sound weird.
Yeah, and like, and then to be sure, I don't think anyone should be raped to death in prison. But bruh's in for a rude awakening right on the sixth borough.
Bad news for you, bruh.
Yeah,
I just got my dear bruh letter. I'm gonna be raped.
I was gonna say when he gets sentenced, that's the bruh moment. Technically, that is what the legal system refers to it as.